Hi, welcome to Beef Cattle Institute's Ask the Experts, where our experts will answer your question. I'm Brad White, and with me today is Dr. Brian Libers
Hi, Brad.
and Dr. Bob Larson.
Hey, Brad.
Happy to have you guys here, and we appreciate you sending in listener questions. Our format is you send in a question, we find the right experts to answer it, and as these experts answer the question, they each get a score up to 10 points because we've only got a few minutes to go through the basics. Today's is a tough one, guys. It is, if I am bringing in calves at high risk for disease to my operation, whether it's a stock or a feedlot, what are your tips and tricks to manage those calves to minimize the disease? Brian, I'm going to go with you first.
So I assume we're talking about bovine respiratory disease, and I'll start with metaphylaxis. So that's or we can say mass medication. We can call it treatment for control of disease. It's all those terms have the same connotation where we are administering antibiotics to groups of calves because they have risk factors that are known to attribute to respiratory disease. Again, it's a commonly used tool. We have antimicrobials that are labeled for it. And we know there's been a lot of clinical trials that have been done that show that using that tool reduces morbidity and mortality in those groups of calves.
Absolutely. So metaphylaxis, great answer. We're going to start with that to control our respiratory disease. So 8 points for Brian out of the gate, Bob.
That's kind of tough. Some of the other things to consider are what I would call just basic animal husbandry. So make sure the pens are ready for arrival. So I want a good clean pen to put the cattle on. I want clean water that's readily accessible. A lot of times if these high-risk calves are coming straight off a cow, they may not even really know how to get to water. So I prefer, a big open tank. Sometimes we even run water onto the ground to draw them to the tank versus something that's more artificial that they're not used to, such as a high automatic water or something. The calves may or may not really recognize that. So water intake, feed intake, a good transition diet that starts with a little more forage and then moves to a little more grain. All of those things become really important to get that calf off to a good start. So I'm going to say good animal husbandry, including basically the facilities and the nutrition, is a place to start.
Excellent. Like that answer a lot. So manage the basics, not just antibiotics at arrival, manage the basics. Would have had more points than Brian, but you went a little bit over time. So seven points, Bob. Brian, now I'm going to refocus after they arrive. And the listener question was, what should I do kind of when they arrive? But after they arrive, what are some of the things I can do to try to control that disease? We talked about husbandry, metaphylaxis. Anything after they arrive I can do?
Well, and I'll kind of cheat a little bit because the other thing I was going to say after hearing Bob's answer is the other thing, we'll often do a lot of things right when they get to the feedlot. So we may, if these are young calves, we may be dehorning, we may be castrating, we may be vaccinating. And there's some evidence out there that says maybe for some of those procedures, it's better to wait. Let the calves get in, let them rest, let them get acclimated to new feed, water, new pen mates maybe, and then come back and do some of those processing procedures like dehorning, castration, kind of spread the stress out, I think is kind of the theory.
I like that. So it's the little things that we do and how we do those. Bob?
Well, the thing I'm going to emphasize is particularly early, let's monitor those cattle pretty carefully with well-trained people that can identify respiratory disease and other problems. We know that a lot of the respiratory disease breaks are going to start by within the first 2 weeks. Now, the frustrating thing with that statement is it's also very possible for you to have some cases more than 2 weeks after arrival. But let's really put in the work and really monitor those cattle the first couple of weeks so we can identify sick cattle and treat them as soon as possible.
So not just how we monitor, but when we monitor in depth over that first couple week period. All right, Brian is leading 8-7 at this point. So Brian, give me one last take home. One piece of advice. I'm bringing in high risk calves. Give me one take home.
I think the take home for this year is it's going to be different. We have drought. We have generic drugs. You probably aren't going to manage, even if you're used to managing high risk calves, you're not going to do it the same this year as you had in the years past.
Bob?
My only take home might be, as always with high risk calves, you're going to have to do a lot of things well to try to manage that risk.
Excellent. I agree. A lot of things, and you have to make sure that detail is there. I like that you guys said, hey, my solution's not going to come in a bottle. I got to do the little things. I got to do them well, and I got to do them at the right times. Thank you for joining us today. Brian walks away with 9 points, and Bob ended up with 8.5. And no, just 8. And you could still lose points at this point. If you have any questions that you'd like us to discuss, send us an email to beefcattleInstitutes@bci@ksu.edu.